What's going on, everybody? Bill Murphy here for the Sports Insanity Network, and welcome to Murphy's View. Today is a very special day, because on this day, April 15th, 1947, 75 years ago today, Jackie Roosevelt Robinson played his first game, making his Major League Baseball debut, and becoming the first ever African American to play in Major League Baseball. This was a landmark event, not just for baseball, but also for American history. Though he did not get a hit that game was just basically the start of the door, not just for Robinson's career, but for what was to follow. That year, Robinson was Rookie of the Year in 1947, and then years on from that, he was a six-time All-Star between 1949 and 1954, and he was also National League MVP in 1949. And in that realm of him playing up until his retirement in 1956, he won a World Series in 1955 and was also NL batting champion in 1949. So put the skills aside. If we look at this as from more of a historical perspective, while he did get a good reaction at Ebbets Field that day, the reaction to Robinson coming up from other sources was not exactly like that. Such as when he came up to Brooklyn, most of his own teammates signed a petition that said, if he plays, we're not playing. But you got to give credit to the following people who stood up to that, such as Branch Rickey, who found Robinson and wanted to sign him, and also give credit to the Brooklyn Dodgers manager, who said, I don't care if he's black, white, or has stripes like a zebra, he's playing. And also the commissioner of baseball at the time, who said, I don't care if half the league strikes. And a big person to give a shout out throughout all that was Pee Wee Reese, who said that he would play with Robinson, and the two ended up becoming good friends until Robinson passed away in 1972. So, and not just in Brooklyn, but also on the field, also on the road. Robinson had to stay in different hotels than his teammates. He had to face heckling and boos and death threats from crowds and from complete and utter strangers. But he endured. And he went down in history as not just a sports icon, but as an American icon. Jackie Robinson opened the door for African American players, because, believe it or not, Jackie Robinson was actually not the only African American player to debut that year. 4 others debuted that same year, such as 3 months after Robinson, the Cleveland Indians signed Larry Doby, who was the first African American player to play in the American League. And that opened the door for many, many other players for the next 12 years when baseball would become fully integrated in 1959 having all teams have African American players. But it wasn't just the African American community. Well, the African American community was a big part of Jackie Robinson's debut, because if you look down the road, we wouldn't have had players like Bob Gibson and Ernie Banks and Tony Gwynn and Ken Griffey Jr. and Willie Mays and Barry Bonds. It's all because of Jackie Robinson. And then, like, years later, he also opened the door for players of other races, such as Hispanics, when we saw the debut of Roberto Clemente, who was also signed by Branch Rickey, by the way. There's an interesting fact to impress your friends with. Robinson opened the door for players of color. He opened the door. And in 1962, he became the first African American to go into the Hall of Fame. And his impact just continues so much when in 1997, they retired Robinson's number all throughout baseball. The only other player to wear that number was Mariano Rivera. And now every year, to commemorate Jackie Robinson's breaking baseball's color barrier, every year, Major League Baseball has all their players wear 42 to commemorate this. And it wasn't just baseball that Robinson opened up the world for in sports. If it wasn't for Robinson, we probably wouldn't be having great African American players like Michael Jordan in basketball, or Magic Johnson, or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, or we wouldn't have golfers like Tiger Woods. All because of Jackie Robinson. And as I said earlier, it shouldn't just be looked as an event in sports, but also in a huge event for the civil rights movement. This happened in 1947, 8 years before Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus. It happened 16 years before Martin Luther King had a dream. Jackie Robinson was one of the first major civil rights heroes. And that is why he should not just go down in the sports history books, but the American history books. And I would like to conclude my thoughts. In the movie 42 that came out in 2013, starring the late, great Chadwick Boseman as Jackie Robinson, there is a scene when his teammate and longtime friend Pee Wee Reese says to Jackie, "Maybe someday we'll all be wearing 42. Let alone, listen, I don't know if that scene was real or it was just artistic liberties, but let alone 75 years later, Pee Wee Reese was right. Today we all are wearing 42 because of Jackie Robinson. So, all I have to say is, may Jackie Robinson, God rest your soul, and thank you for the impact you have made on Major League Baseball and America. If you like what you see here, go to www.thesportsinsanitynetwork.com, and don't forget to check out our podcasts, such as the one that started it all, the Sports Insanity Podcast, Wishbone Shotgun, The Face Turn, The Throwdown, and the Breakaway Bandits, and our new golf podcast, The 19th Hole. Thank you for watching, guys. Follow us on all social media. Thank you. Stay safe and take care.